Okay, this morning I'm going to do a simile on mindfulness. And this simile comes from the Samyutta Nikaya. This is the collection of the Buddhist teachings that are in sort of thematically arranged, and they're quite short. This is from the 35th chapter in that collection, and sutta number 245. There are lots of suttas in this collection because some of them, like a lot of them, are less than 1 page long. And this is only part of this particular sutta because he actually gives 2 different similes in the sutta. So I'm going to do the second simile. And it goes like this. Suppose there was a king's frontier citadel with fortified embankments, ramparts, and arches, and 6 gates. And it has a gatekeeper who is astute, competent, and clever. He keeps strangers out and lets known people in. A swift pair of messengers would arrive from the east and say to the gatekeeper, "Mister, where is the lord of the city?" They'd say, "There he is, sirs, seated at the central square." Then that swift pair of messengers would deliver a message of truth to the lord of the city and depart the way they came. A swift pair of messengers would then come from the west, from the north, from the south, and they would deliver a message of truth to the lord of the city and then depart the way they came. And the Buddha goes on to say, I've made up this simile to make a point, and this is the point. City is a term for this body made up of the 4 primary elements, produced by mother and father, built up from rice and porridge, liable to impermanence, to wearing away and erosion, to breaking up and destruction. The 6 gates is a term for the 6 interior sense fields. Gatekeeper is a term for mindfulness. A swift pair of messengers is a term for serenity and discernment and insight. The lord of the city is a term for consciousness. And the central square is a term for the 4 primary elements, the elements of earth, water, fire, and air. A message of truth is a term for enlightenment, awakening. The way they came is a term for the Noble Eightfold Path, that is, right view, right thought, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right stillness, right samadhi. So this was the first simile I ever heard of the Buddhas. And I'm going to make comments on it, but I'm going to just focus on the gatekeeper who represents mindfulness. He's described as astute, competent, and clever. So mindfulness in the Pali language, the word is Sati, and Sati actually means memory. And what are we remembering? We're remembering to stay focused on the present moment. So often we get lost in the past or in the future. And so when mindfulness wakes up, it can notice that we're no longer in the present moment. It remembers that that's where we want to be, and it can bring us back to the present moment. And there's something else that mindfulness remembers, and that's the teachings of the Buddha, the teachings on what is skillful and what is not skillful. So the simile is of a gatekeeper who lets in who is known and who is unknown. So this is a simile for mindfulness, allowing us to focus, turn our attention to what is skillful, and bring our attention away from what is unskillful. And the definition of skillful is that which brings us to our final goal, which is awakening, the end of suffering. So we have a term for what prevents us from getting to our goal, and that's hindrances. And the Buddha defined, sort of categorized the hindrances into 5 categories. So the first is, and I just had a quote here from Ajahn Brahm of how he defines mindfulness. He says that mindfulness is being aware of what you're doing and what is skillful to do. Being aware of what you're doing and what is skillful to do. So dealing with the hindrances is the main thing that we do when we sit down to meditate, because we decide to focus on our meditation object. But then, of course, our habit energy pulls us into the past or pulls us into the future, away from the present moment, from focusing on our meditation object. And so this is the majority of work that we're doing when we're sitting down to meditate, is noticing these hindrances and then working with them. So as I mentioned, a lot of this has to just do with our habit energy. And this is the normal state of our minds before we start this process of training our minds. Now, it's very important when we meet the hindrances that we meet them with an attitude of acceptance, not with frustration or anger. You may want to think of a phrase like, when you become aware of a hindrance, you could think, oh, welcome. Thank you for coming. But now I'm going to let you go. So I will be going over these hindrances in detail in the next few weeks, but I'm going to make a few comments right now on them. So the first is wanting, desire, greed. And this is, wanting is very okay to want as a layperson. It's necessary for, us in our lay life to, to want to have a good job, to pay the bills, to, have a comfortable place to live, etc. But the important thing is that we don't pin our happiness on getting what we want. What we do is we put our ducks in a row to maximize the chances of manifesting our wish. But then once we've put the conditions in place, then we let go, because we're not in control of the outcome. All we can do is do our best, set the conditions. And then we want to come back to the present moment and feel happiness, contentment, satisfaction with this present moment. If you're just saying, I can't be happy until I get this thing that I want, then you're spending most of your life in an unhappiness. So we put our ducks in a row, and then we come back to the present moment and find contentment there. And another thing we can do, in lay life, is consider letting go of excessive desires, or, things that aren't really necessary. So instead of pinning our happiness on the next sensory hit, which is unreliable and impermanent, we learn satisfaction, contentment with the present moment as it is. And it's a more subtle form of happiness, but it's actually more satisfying, because desires are insatiable. As soon as you realize, manifest one desire, like have it satisfied, then oops, up pops another desire. And so it's just, constantly flogging the horse. Now, if you want to get more information on dealing with desire, on our website under the teachings, under basic teachings in lesson 5, if you do the complete download, there's 9 different methods listed there for dealing with desires. The second hindrance is aversion or ill will. And we certainly don't feel good when this feeling is present. So if our aversion or ill will is to a situation, it's important to take a step back and consider how feeling upset, feeling averse, is not changing the situation. All you're doing is stabbing yourself with that second arrow. And also keep in mind that whatever the situation is, it's impermanent. It's going to pass. Now, if your aversion or ill will is towards a person, then if you're able to conjure up compassion, like realizing that this person is doing the best they know how to protect themselves, if you can have that kind of understanding, you might be able to diffuse. You might be able to diffuse the situation. And one of the methods I often use is from the Tibetan tradition. It's called Tonglen. And this is when you just, through your left nostril, you breathe in, the anger or the disappointment or the outrage or whatever it is that's coming from this other person. You breathe it in through your left nostril down to your dantian or the hara, which is just below your belly button. It's sort of our energy center. Breathe it into there. And you may visualize it as like red, or if it's anger, or anyways, some shape or color. But then you transform it. So it's just like when you have an eclipse and then the sun or the moon comes out from the shadow, you transform it into love and light. So I always think of sort of sparkly energy. And then you breathe this out through your right nostril and fill this person who's creating this aversion in you. You fill them with love and light. And I find it a very calming way to deal with a very uncomfortable situation. And of course, the other thing that you can always do is metta, sending metta, loving friendliness to this person. The next hindrance is dullness and drowsiness, and this is a low energy state. So if this is happening, you can, instead of doing sitting meditation, you could get up and do fast walking, or you could continue sitting, but open your eyes and look to the light, or go and splash some water on your face. And again, if you go to the website to lesson 5, it gives 12 different methods for increasing your energy. The next hindrance is restlessness and remorse. And I've heard some teachers say, and I think this is for advanced meditators, they say, don't move. Sit through the restlessness and see what you can learn or understand. But my experience is that unless you have a really solid practice and can sit in meditation for long periods of time, this is not good advice. Doing walking or even running meditation is really helpful to settle the agitation or restlessness. And then you can switch to sitting. And I'll just tell you my story of when I first encountered meditation. I'd gone for this non-residential weekend retreat. This was 1991. And I'd never experienced meditation before. And I think after a bit of introductory comments, they had us sit to watch our breath for 10 minutes. And I almost went crazy. It was the first time in my life I had met my brain, because I'd always been outwardly focused. and I'd never met this brain, and I just wanted to run out of the room screaming. It was such an intense negative experience. And I can remember I was just a very energetic, high energy person doing a million things at once. And I can remember sitting in my front room, knitting, reading a book, and watching TV all at once. Like my brain was just so occupied externally. It never met itself. So I had this really awful experience in this meditation retreat of sitting and meeting my mind. But then the beautiful thing was, they then taught us walking meditation, and it was so wonderful. Taking my focus away from my brain down to my feet, feeling my feet touching the ground, lifting and placing them. I just felt like this beautiful ballerina walking across the floor and walking back. And so the wonderful thing was, I met my brain. It was, I met how intense and frantic it was. And then a few minutes later, I met this method of how to calm it, because it totally calmed me. So this hooked me. This hooked me onto meditation. And then I had 4 powerful experiences in the week or 2 after that just really solidified, my appreciation of the benefit of this meditation training. So I used to work at the general hospital in the morning, and then I would walk through this park to the LRT station to get to the Northeast Mental Health Clinic, where I worked in the afternoon. And I had been walking through that park for 10 years, and I had never seen that park. Because when I was walking through that park, I was post-hashing all the patients I'd seen in the morning and pre-hashing all the patients I was going to see in the afternoon. I never saw that park. But the day after this weekend retreat, I went back to work, and so I was trying to be in the present moment. So when I walked through that park, I was looking at the grass, looking at the trees, looking at the sky, being present. And it was such a powerful experience. I mean, this was over 30 years ago, and I can remember that experience. It was so powerful. The first time I saw that park in 10 years. And remember, the trees had these little seeds. There were 2 seeds connected together like a helicopter propeller, and they were twirling down, coming off the trees and twirling down. And I was just fascinated by all these little helicopter seeds twirling down. Then I remember looking up, and there was a bald eagle flying overhead. It was so beautiful. So that just this beauty of being present in this park was a very powerful, beautiful experience. And then soon after that, I flew to Toronto for a psychiatry conference. And I was staying with my brother and then walking to the metro station in the morning and getting to the conference. And it went swimmingly well the first couple of days. And then on the Sunday morning, I walked to the metro station, and there was this huge iron grill closing off the entrance to the station. And I freaked, because when I go to conferences to get fed with knowledge. I don't go to conferences to sightsee or, shop or whatever. I go there, I want to be fed with knowledge. And so I really wanted to be at that morning workshop. I wanted to hear that information they were going to be giving, but I had no idea how I was going to get there. And being Scottish Ukrainian, the idea of paying money for a cab to go a long distance, that just was not a possibility. So I was just freaking. And then I remembered what I'd been taught in the meditation weekend. And so I came to my breath, and I could literally feel the tension drain down my body and out my feet. I've never had that experience since, but that first time I experienced it, it was such an amazing feeling of all this tension just draining down and out. So in that moment of clarity, I thought, okay, what am I going to do? And I decided I'm going to walk up the street until I found a bus station and wait for a bus. So I did walking meditation, and there was a bus station quite close. So that was fine. So I was happy. But then my brain started thinking again and going, what if there are no buses on Sunday? Or what if they're like an hour apart or whatever? So I started freaking again. But then I remembered to go back to my breath. I calmed. And so in the calm, once I was calm, I was able to make another decision, which was I'm going to wait 10 minutes. And if there's no bus, then I'll walk up the street. And this was in the ancient days before cell phones. So I was going to walk up the street till I found a phone booth. And then I'd phone the bus company and find out what was going on. But anyway, the bus came in 5 minutes. So that was wonderful. I'm all joyful, and I sit down on the bus and I'm all smiles. I'm going to make it to my conference on time. But then the bus stopped a couple of blocks later, and then it stopped another couple of blocks later. And then I started freaking again, thinking the metro goes zoom, like with one other stop to the hotel. And this bus is going to stop. And we're a long ways away from the hotel. I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to be late. But then again, I remembered what I'd been taught, and I thought, I'm not going to get off the bus and call a cab. My Scottish Ukrainian heritage wouldn't allow that. So I'm on the bus, and that's it. I either make it or I don't make it. And I realized that freaking out wasn't going to get me there any faster. So I went back to my breath, and I just sat doing breathing meditation. Anyway, we got to the hotel like just in the nick of time. So I ran across the street, ran into the hotel, ran down the corridor into the room, which was packed, but there was a spot in the front seat. I got down, and the teacher had just come to the podium and was just going to start to speak. So I was so happy. And then I had another amazing realization about a half an hour into the talk. I realized that I had been sitting there listening to the teacher and writing notes. And I realized my past habit energy, if this had happened before the workshop, I would have made it to be there to listen to the teacher. But I wouldn't have listened to the teacher. I would have been in my head going, I would have been reviewing the whole trauma of getting there. And I wouldn't have been listening, even though that's why I had come. So I was really impressed with this meditation because it allowed me to get there and be present and learn from this teacher instead of being in my head reviewing the trauma. So I was just being more and more enamored with his meditation practice. Then the third sort of event that just really got me hooked onto meditation was I'm back home, and we've got company coming for dinner, and I'm making the dinner, and I look at the clock and I realize I'm not going to be done in time. And normally I would have just been freaking out, like frantically trying to get things together, and I would have felt like a limp dish rag by the time the company came and not be able to enjoy them being there because I'd stressed myself so much. So here I am preparing. I started with my habit energy to freak out, but then I remembered the teachings. I came back to the present moment. And again, this is such a powerful experience that over 3 years later, I can still remember this. I was baking a cake, or, mixing up the ingredients for a cake. And so I came back to the present moment, being present, and I'm stirring oil into, maybe there was oil and water or something in there, and it was making this really cool pattern. And I remember really getting off as I'm stirring this cake batter on the pattern of swirls the oil was making in the other liquid. And then I was grating a carrot, and I was really getting off on the curls that the carrot was making. So the company did come. I wasn't finished preparing, but I was totally relaxed. Instead of my previous way of, I would have been a limp dish rag, but instead I was totally relaxed. They just came into the kitchen and chatted with me while I finished cooking. And it was just such a beautiful experience, not to be, stressed out. And then my final experience here, just within a week or two of this workshop, was I was at work, and prior to the workshop, when I would be interviewing a new patient at the hospital, I was trying to be very efficient because, we were time pressured. I might come in and there might have been like 4 new people admitted overnight. And so then I had 3 hours that I had to somehow manage these 3 new people. And so I was trying to be like fast and efficient. So 50% of my brain would be listening to what the story the person was telling me. And the other 50% of my brain was thinking, okay, what's the diagnosis? What's the treatment plan? What do I have to do? But I took a different attitude after this meditation workshop, and I just was with the person 100%. I just 100% listening to their story. And then I was really amazed when they finished the story, like bloop, up into my mind popped the diagnosis and treatment plan. Because of course, I was trained. So I realized I didn't have to be doing that 50-50 split. I was able to be fully present, and by being fully present, then just the diagnosis and treatment plan just popped into my head. And I really feel that the patients could feel the difference when I was 100% there listening rather than just being 50% there listening. It was a really, I think it really transformed my practice as a psychiatrist. So I was just so grateful. So anyway, that's how I dealt with restlessness or agitation. And just had these really fantastic experiences that just hooked me for life. Here I am way over 30 years later, still enamored with the Buddhist teachings. And so then we have one more hindrance, and that's doubt. And now this is not just any doubt. This is refers to doubt about the teachings of the Buddha, like doubting, are these teachings going to be helpful? And it's also, or it's doubt about yourself, thinking, okay, there's something wrong with me. I won't be able to apply these teachings. I won't be able to benefit from them. The teachings are okay, but I won't be able to benefit. So if that's coming up, that's a good time to ask for an individual interview with Aya or myself, to get some outside support. And then, of course, once you start having the experiences like I had, then the doubt just drops away because you have the positive experiences. Now, the Buddha, he taught a whole sutta focused on mindfulness, and it's called the Sati Sutta. And it's in the middle length, the collection of his teachings that are sort of middle length, called the Majjhima Nikaya, and it's teaching number 10. It's called the Satipatthana Sutta, and that means the focuses of mindfulness. So what the Buddha did was he took all the things that we could be mindful of and put it into 4 different categories. So the first category is the physical body, and there's different meditations you can do with the body, but the absolute commonest one is the breath, focusing on our in and out breathing. The second focus of mindfulness is on our feeling tone. This is called Vedana. And the feeling tone is that sort of primitive, instant tone that we get with every sensory experience. And it's either pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. So every time you hear a sound, there'll also be a tone, feeling tone of pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral with that. Or every time you smell something or see something or think something, taste something, physically feel something, there'll be this immediate. So this is not an elaborated emotion like anger or frustration or whatever. It's sort of a more basic kind of tone. Then the next category is mind state. So this is where these, are emotions, so they wait it can stop right there, just as pleasant, unpleasant, neutral, or it can expand into, hate or aversion or desire or, any kind of emotion. But it can also, the mind states, this third category of mindfulness. It can also refer to the mind being focused or being scattered, being in deep states of stillness versus not, and other things. Just a minute, let me go back to my notes here. Oh yes, I wanted to say that this year in my practice, I've noticed something new, and that I'm becoming more aware of subtle states of aversion. I mean, the practice is, I could be very angry, especially about environmental issues and things. But a lot of that with my meditation practice, is just sort of settled down. I mean, I can still get my buttons pushed and feel irritated or whatever, especially with those AI robots that you meet on the telephone or whatever. That seems to be my commonest thing that gets me upset when they don't give me a choice that refers to my situation. But generally, I don't have anger arising. But I'm becoming aware of, more subtle, like if I have a pain in the body, there'll be some aversion to that. Or if I'm feeling, that it's cold out and I'm feeling the cold, I'll feel sort of aversion to that. And so it's just sort of like my awareness is, with my practice, has come down to sort of a more subtle level, and it can just pick up this little background, really quiet murmurings of aversion. And I know in the past I would have missed that, and I would have been, rah, 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 and stabbing myself with that second arrow, and not even, being that really aware of what I was doing. It'd just be on automatic pilot. Okay, so we've got the body, we've got the feeling tone, we've got mind states. And then the fourth category is called Dhamma categories. And this is referring to teachings of the Buddha. Now, if you go and read the Satipatthana Sutta, you'll find out there's a lot of different teachings that they put into this section. But Buddhist scholars, sort of who are studying the history, of how things evolve, like it's quite clear that a lot of these categories that you'll read about when you read the sutta have been, like, they're padding. They're things that have, over the centuries, have been added in by translators or people who are writing out the suttas. They thought, oh, well, the Buddha taught this too. We'll put it in here. And the scholars can tell that this has happened, because it's like reading reading Shakespearean English, and then all of a sudden you have modern English. So, and there's various other ways that they can tell that something has been added in at a later time. So the good news is it really boils down to two categories: being aware of the hindrances and being aware of the factors of awakening, the 7 factors of awakening. And these two categories, they really fit in beautifully with the 4 right efforts, which is part of the Noble Eightfold Path, our path to the end of suffering. So the first effort, the first right effort, is to prevent the hindrances from arising. So if our mindfulness can keep us in the present moment, then they're not going to arise. But if we sort of get yanked into the past or future, then the hindrances can come up. And then we apply the second right effort, which is when they do come up, then we make an effort after accepting them with kindness, not with anger. When they do come up, then we make an effort to let them go. And then the next 2 efforts are about the factors of awakening. These are the factors that lead us to awakening. So the third right effort is to allow these factors to arise. And then the fourth effort is, once they've arisen, to maintain them or actually have them increase. So this is the majority of what we're doing when we're sitting down in our meditation practice. So I want to talk about the 7 factors of awakening, because I don't think we've talked about them before, and I can share the screen for these. Let's see what happens if I do that. Whoops, there we go. So you'll notice that we've already talked about the first 3. So employing mindfulness is the first factor that is leading us towards awakening. So when we're sitting down and doing our practice, bringing our mind to our meditation object, we're doing the first factor. That's wonderful. And then this term, the second factor, is investigation of dhammas. And that just, as I said, the Dhamma categories we want to really be aware of are the hindrances and the factors of awakening. So this is our gatekeeper, our mindfulness, saying, oh, here's a hindrance. We're going to let that go. Or, oh, here's a factor of awakening. We're going to invite that in. So that's all that means, is when you're in your sitting, watching your breath, or whatever your meditation object is to be aware that a hindrance has arisen, and then to remember the teachings and to remember, the various techniques that there are, which I will be going over in detail in the next few weeks, the techniques for letting that go. Or if it's the factors of awakening, just, and we're going to make the effort to increase them by doing these first 3 steps, being mindful, noticing when it's there, putting in the effort. And then, so these first 3 factors, they're like riding your bicycle uphill. They are taking some effort. Now, we don't want this to be squeezed down, tense effort. We want this to be gentle and kind. So this is like riding your bike uphill. There is some effort involved. But then the beautiful thing is these last steps here. This is, you've got to the top of the hill and now you're just coasting. So now these just naturally evolve if you're continuing to do those first 3 steps. They just naturally unfold. So the first is piti. That's the Pali term for joy. So this joy just arises. As I said, like, and I was walking through that park and watching the little helicopter seats coming down and seeing the bald eagle. I felt such joy. And that was just being present to the present moment. So at first there's joy, and then joy matures into this tranquility, this calm state, which is a very satisfying peaceful, beautiful experience. And then this evolves into this stillness. This is the word samadhi. And so the other term for that is jhana. So this is a state that we come into where all of our external senses shut down and we just have this sort of pure mind awareness, which is very blissful. And then there's several stages to this, the jhana states. There's several stages. And as you go through the stages, it then evolves into equanimity, this unflappable calm, which I'm told by teachers who have experienced this, that this is even more satisfying than the bliss of the earlier stages of jhana. So it's just like PT transforming into tranquility. Well, here the bliss of jhanas, of the early jhanas, evolving into equanimity, and just being really beautiful experiences. So, in summary, if we put in the baseline, I didn't talk about this today, but we've talked about it a lot in previous talks. We always start with a baseline of morality, kindness, and generosity. So we have that baseline. Then we sit down to meditate. And then when the hindrances arise, we accept that they are there, the fact that they're there. And then we employ the right efforts to let them go. Then we return back to our meditation object. And doing this, we've employed the first three factors here, the factors of awakening. So that's the third effort, is having the factors of awakening be aroused. And so we're doing that. And then the rest is coasting downhill. It's just going to evolve as we continue to gently be with our meditation object. And of course, we don't have to just be aware of hindrances and the factors of awakening when we're on our cushion meditating. We can also be doing this during our daily life. So I hope you can see how simple and straightforward the practice of meditation is. However, for most of us, it's a long road to let go of the habit energy of the hindrances. So it's simple, but for most of us, it does take a long time to transform our habit energies. But even though it's a long road to awakening, we get many benefits, improvements along the way. You know, when I gave my story of starting meditation, I just had these real wow experiences, you know, right at the beginning. And then I just gave you an example of my most recent one, this being able to be mindful of this real subtle aversion that, you know, comes with discomfort. And I'll just close with a quote by the Buddha. And he said, the Dhamma is good in the beginning, it's good in the middle, and it's good at the end. Okay. So we have a few minutes left for any questions or comments. I'll take this away.
Sanghamitta, I'd just like to say I so am grateful for your teachings, because you are just so competent to be able to bring so much context into the teaching. And I just really am very, very, I just can't appreciate the amount that you also focus on the hindrances. And that's something I think in my practice, I don't think about just on the top of my head. And to kind of put that into context, there's just always been so much, especially with the group that I'm sitting with on mindfulness, And then, you kind of forget about these other factors that also kind of contribute to that. And I just find, having been in your group, and, I think even last year, just the introduction of, the hindrances and the gradual training, that had brought in so much more depth into my understanding. So, I just very, very thankful. This teaching today was really spot on. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, I felt on a real mission because when I was first taught, I was just taught to be with my breath. And then I wasn't, I thought, is there anything else to the teachings? And yes, there is. And so been on a real mission to, share the gradual training. Yes. That's great that you found this helpful. Is there time? Okay, so if there are no other comments or questions, we'll close with mudita. So if anyone hasn't done this before, mudita is the third Brahma Vihara, the third beautiful emotion that we want to cultivate. And this is being happy for the happiness of others. So even if you're having a bad day, somewhere, someone in the world is having a good day. And if you hear about it, if you can focus on that, that can bring up some joy in your mind. So our practice is to go around the live room and the Zoom room. And I mean, if you want to pass, you can pass. But otherwise, if you can share a recent happiness, in your life, or a recent good deed that you did, and then the rest of us will feel happy for you. That'll be it. The rest of us will be practicing mudita when you share your happiness. So my happiness right now is that my doctor's going to call me this afternoon. I've been put on this horrible medication that's why I didn't chant. It just causes such a dryness. And so I guess I've lubricated talking for half an hour, but I was so froggy this morning from this medication. So I'm hoping he changes me to something else. But anyway, I'm so joyful he's calling me today. Okay, so Jeffrey.
Hi, Mary. I'm so grateful for a gift that was given to me by my daughter and my son. It's a dream of mine to go to France, and they gifted me that for Father's Day, and then I'm leaving in September with them to build more memories with them, and I'm so grateful. It's really touched my heart.
Wow.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Share.
I'm really grateful because I've had this horrible cold for a couple of weeks now. Well, a week and a half. It feels like a couple of weeks. But it hasn't gone down into my lungs. And so it's just all in my head, and I can manage it, but I can still breathe. And I'm really grateful for being able to breathe. Yeah.
Jennifer.
Hi, I'm actually scheduled to do a Goenka retreat this Wednesday. And I haven't done an intensive retreat for quite a number of years. So today, just having this teaching to kind of help with, reminding myself of some of the, other, this is a really good talk to kind of come into a retreat, in terms of some of the context there. So just looking forward to that and seeing what comes on the other side.
Okay, great. Sarah.
A recent happiness was I went to my little granddaughter's first violin recital. She's 6, And there were about 25 little tiny people with little tiny violins, and it was hard on the ears, but it was a wonder to the heart because you could see them fight their nervousness and then remember what they had learned and squawk out their little pieces. It was really wonderful.
Sharon.
A couple of weeks ago, my sister, brother-in-law, and my husband helped me get up to Crypt Lake from Waterton, which is just in the all my energy, all I can do. I'll just sort of see if I can do this with the camera. This is a picture of Swirling Mist Falls, and it's incredibly beautiful and a really arduous hike. We got it back just in time to get on the boat, stash my bear spray, and stagger on, literally. So probably my last chance to do that, but it was just so awesome. So I was really happy about that.
Aya.
Today is my son's birthday, and I spoke with him yesterday. He's a scientist, hardcore scientist, and he's doing Ashtanga yoga teacher training in Bali.
Whoa.
And it's really landing for him. It through his body is his door into anything, I think, spiritual, emotional, and I'm just so happy for him that some things are opening up for him in his heart and in his life. Yeah.
Kusala.
A friend that I used to work with in working days, I only see her about once a year. So she made the trek out to Canmore. Said, I'm taking you for lunch. We both deserve a break. And so it was just so wonderful just to catch up with old friends. Yeah.
Lovely. Bodhipala.
Well, I can't help it be extra, have a lot of mudita for Sharon. The famous Crypt Lake hike. I've never done it. It's supposedly pretty incredible. So I have a lot of happiness for your happiness there. And then, yeah, just over the last period of time, say little moments of real appreciation for the people around me and for some of their skills. Little example from last night, a young man who is my partner for a course in communication. He described just so wonderfully, he's only 22, but it sounds like his relationship with his parents is very fraught, and he's never had more than a 2-minute conversation with his father on the phone before just having to shut the whole thing down. And he found a way to set an appropriate boundary with his father, just saying outright, like, when you talk to me like that, I want to run away. And it's not, can we change this, and could you be interested in me as a person right now? And proceeded to have a 30-minute conversation with his father. It was just beautiful to hear about, the skill level in a young person like that is quite something. Right.
May the merit of our practice be shared with all sentient beings, named and unnamed. Please, Blair, Ryan, Mudita. May all beings be well and happy. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Sanghamitta. See you next week.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Bye.
Thank you, Sanghamitta.